So it's impossible. One of the reasons this type of dialogue is kind of tricky is because it's so difficult to be accurate, because you have to generalize, right? And there's so many different situations in every single life, and so many different codes and archetypes and imbalances. So it's never going to be an accurate description for you, but it's going to be somewhat accurate. It's going to be a somewhat accurate read, hopefully, of the collective imbalance. So just bear that in mind, I guess. The way I see it currently, and this might change, but I feel that the card is kind of in the hand of the women at this point in time, and I'll explain what I mean by this. Meaning to turn the tides, to turn the tables on collective healing. The ball is in your court, ladies. Of course, not entirely. It is a co-creation, and men need to continue to balance and evolve in their own way. But you guys have females have a very unique, collectively, unique position at this timing. It's very crucial for collective healing. So again, I'll explain a little bit more on this. But if you look at history, and I mean, you don't even need to look deeply into it. It's quite obvious, right? You can see that. Let's see. So if this was to represent the balance of power, like total equality in terms of how much each of the energies contributes, or how much power they have in the healing or the advancement of civilization, then you could visualize that this is what's been happening in the past. I don't know where to draw that line in terms of history, but thousands of years. And there's been many waves in different ways in between then. But you could say that if this is the male side of where the power is placed, and this is female, it's kind of been like this. Wait, let me see if I can draw this one time. Well, for fun, let's just call it 2012. Give or take a few years or decades. So the power has been on the side of the male species, right? So we've been using brute force and power and that penetrative power to basically abuse, suppress, make all the rules, make all the laws, etc. So this has been what's happening. Now, this might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but basically the power shifted not that long ago. And by power, I don't mean that suddenly society is ruled by women and that the laws and the suppression and oppression and abuse, that's no longer happening, and that now females are all dominatrixes and they're like dominating male. That's not what I mean by power. By power, I mean the power to make a difference, the power to restore balance, right? We had, even though it was abused, we had the power to restore balance on the male side of things. But that hasn't happened. So there is this sort of, this is elastic band effect. So the imbalance now goes in the opposite direction. The way I see it, again, is that women at this time, collectively, have more influence in the healing of our collective than men do. And that is in the way of forgiveness. So we've been through this whole resurgence of independence, and this has many different expressions, from a woman trying to like perform well at her 9-to-5 office job, suck her boss's cock and wear like masculine clothing, and like abuse herself in that way, out of sort of a rebound against the imbalance that has been the case for so long. So obviously that's not balance. That's not what, for most people at least, what that natural feminine energy wants to exude. And again, feminine energy and masculine energy exist in both male and female genders. So those are two things. Now, the issue at present, and this is a very acute thing, this moves rather quickly at this timing in our collective. Like every month it's shifting, so to speak. So it's almost like the update at this timing is that there's still too much attachment in the general collective feminine rebound energy to try to strive for that independence, or I don't know, like it's hard to find the right words again because it's so general, right? Because in some scenarios, independence is a good thing. So just understand that I'm heavily generalizing. Just try to understand where I'm coming from with what I'm saying. Is that this whole trying to now empower yourselves as women in the same way that men would show that power, like externalize, in an externalized way, in a visible way. Like she was saying, the power of the feminine often is not as visible as the power of the men. It's not as physical, it's not as expressed in a way where you can put a label on it. It's more subtle, it's more, you could call it refined in a way, I guess. And so, the main difficulty that I see, or the obstacle to healing at this point in the male-female polarity, is that you try too hard to be your own separate person. You try too hard to stand up for your rights, actually. You're trying too hard to regain your independence. It's based on a fallacy. It's based on an illusion. So literally, you are continuing the imbalance of power, and you're continuing the past male suppression and dominance. You're literally the product of it, right? You're the rebounding product of it. And so if you're not careful, you might actually think that that is your power, that your power is to strive for your independence and be separate and show up for yourself, or set super clear boundaries, you know? So, and sure, there is some truth to all that in balance, everything in balance, case by case scenario. But large and by, like, healing won't happen from that state of separation. You know, to really take it to the next level, we as a feminine collective need to really see how we can forgive the past, because that's the only way to restore ourselves. It's the only way to restore our power as women. So I've regularly alluded to this, maybe not in the best terminology, but again, it's very hard to not get polarizing responses. So, well, there's a difference between, basically what I see is that it's a massive reaction to the past, right? So obviously that's somewhat necessary, and it has been somewhat necessary. But the way that I read it now is that your average, well, maybe not average man, again, there's so many demographics here, but let's just speak to this demographic, the people that are here. Okay, when I sense into the male population here, they are kind of like just sweet and awaiting your next order. They're like, yeah, like, sorry for the past, like, here we are, we want to evolve along with you. Yes. But really, you know, whatever you want is next. We'll just, like, we'll provide, or we'll be there for you, whatever it takes, we're ready. And a lot of the women, not necessarily in this group, but there is some of that energy that we all carry with us, right? So there's some of that rebound energy where it's not seen that actually the male population is ready for that change if it's done with respect and appreciation of the male population as it currently is, not as a rebound from the past. So what the male population is paying for right now is its own dominance in the past by, in a sense, being dominated by the women population, by not being seen, not being heard, not being given equal validity in that way. Does that make sense? Because it's all about the women, not always, obviously, again, generalizing. But there is that energy where the balance of power is more in the hands of women, and we're kind of ready as men. We are much more open, much more mature, much more loving, respectful. So now, if the female population... the conscious men, right? We could say that, right? We're talking about the conscious population. But this is the cutting edge, and this is where we make or dictate the collective difference anyway. So this is really the only population we need to worry about. So if as much as possible, this is where the change happens, right? This is the model for the new earth. So whatever is that fiery, compensatory energy of rising to independence, or rising to separation rather. Separation might be a better word than independence. But it often poses as independence, right? So we call it like being an independent woman, but really it's based on lack protecting yourself and making sure that you're not being suppressed again, so to speak. So this is a rebound energy. It's a reaction to the past. So if, like, just visualize hypothetically that, you know, the power of all females combined, if they come together and they actually decide, you know, do a little fire ceremony or something, and decide to acknowledge everything that has happened, but at the end of that session decide that the only way forward is to forgive everything that has happened. If we as females can, I'm both genders, by the way, if we as females can really allow ourselves to feel that forgiveness and to channel our power, which is in our hands right now, through that grace, through that forgiveness, then I assure you the men are large and by ready to receive that, and they're ready to handle that. Now there is some learning that will happen, obviously, but the readiness is there, the willingness is there. It's not the same as it was, you know, hundreds of years ago, or even 50 years ago. It is shifting rapidly, and I really see that most conscious men these days are extremely malleable, extremely soft, and awaiting your order. So no need to continue the punishment, because the males currently born don't necessarily have anything to do with that. So they're carrying the burden of the ancestors in the way that society was set up in the past, and we're all in a sense just products of that. We've all co-created it, but you could say that presently we are products of that. Our bodies and our emotional bodies are to some extent products of that. So to transcend that, to transform that, we need to really channel that ownership of power in ways of forgiveness, like both ways. But I just see that the female population at present somehow has more say in the matter. Like you know, the ball is in your court in terms of how swift that collective healing will happen. What's your perspective?
Yeah. So I agree entirely. Yeah. Anytime that power needs to be exerted or like inflated, that is not true power in a man or a woman. Power radiates, it emanates, it creates magnetism. It's like that center that we talked about yesterday. So there's the polarity in the collective that's happening because men are bowing at the feet, the conscious men that are awakening are bowing at the feet of women out of guilt and shame. It's kind of like what's happened with the Native American tribes as well. You can see this in America happening quite readily and throughout different movements is, you know, this what's happening, the bowing of the feet for all of the stuff that our ancestors have done. Now, if women take that as a way to gain dominance, then we're just going to continue the vicious cycle. If we can actually meet man...
Or even, sorry, just a little insertion here. Or even, I see a lot, it's not about gaining dominance, but it's about regaining your sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
Right? But if you can reroute it and see that it's nothing to do with your self-worth, how much money you make, or if you can have a job that, you know, shows who you are. Like that rising, that inflation that she was talking about.
Yeah.
That does not show your power, it does not reveal your worth, and worst of all, it distorts your natural energies. So you're actually preventing the healing feminine energy from entering this sphere by blocking it, by trying so hard to be worthy as a rebound effect to having been seen as unworthy or not as valuable. So even for your own sakes, you know, I remember this really polarizing post that I made. It was really funny. I said something along the lines of, please ladies, you know, stop trying to show your worth. You already are worthy. You don't need to stand up for yourself. Just be yourself. You already are power. You already are divine. You already have that energy. You don't have to show it to the world. It will be shown naturally. But if you try to show it to the world, if you try to stand up for yourself, and of course there's certain situations where you need to do that, right? So there's exceptions, or sometimes maybe it's more than an exception, but overall, generally what's needed right now is that in your personal life, that you don't make your life about trying to prove your worth as a rebound effect, as a reaction to the past. You need to really understand that even if it's never shown, even if it's never seen or acknowledged, you are the power, you are that infinite worth. So to not find your infinite worth through altering your natural state, you know, otherwise those healing energies can't come in anyway. You're blocking it with the masculine energy, so then the masculine energy is still dominating, but you're actually continuing it. Yeah, I would love to, and this is what was so polarizing about that post. You know, it just sounded like, more of the old. But I said something along the lines of, I would love to just see women just be women. You know, it's like, yeah, no, like understand the power of just being a man or just being a woman, like just being true and authentic to the energy that you are.
Biologically speaking, this is what's really interesting, is that, so on this level, yes, we can have masculine and feminine energies, that's different, but on a biological level, women are wired differently, biologically, like chemically. So men actually succeed when they have something that excites the adrenal system. So it's like adventure, action, a call, that's that call to action. This is like the biological level of it. Women, so women prosper on a chemical called oxytocin. If you don't know what oxytocin is, it's the bonding chemical. Does that give you a code for the collective, an information imprint or a hint at what we're good at? Women are good at connecting. We connect the tribe, we connect children to our heart and to the world. And what happens is, scientists have done studies on this. There's a beautiful company or business that's made for women called Braveheart Women. And it's actually about the bioenergetics and the sciences behind women in business and actually how you proliferate and make it sustainable. Because what they studied is that women who inflate themselves in this adrenal response, the same as men, actually, they have the peak and then they crash and they bottom out. So it's like you'll go to like a motivational event and you feel really inspired and great and you're gonna take on the world and you've like inflated yourself, you know? And then like women just crash after that. So they just completely bottom out. Their system we're not wired for that. We're made to sit around and support each other while we're weaving baskets, nurturing children. Do you know what I mean? Like our body biologically is made to prosper, to make things, to co-create, to connect, to nurture. And so there's these beautiful systems that are in that, the Braveheart Women movement, that talk about how you go about gaining power, sustainable resonance as a woman. Without this inevitable cycle of the crash and burn after inflating yourself. So that's the actual scientific backing to what he's saying. Of course, people who are transgender or something that are taking testosterone, they're going to have more, a woman that is ultimately transitioning into a man, they're going to have access to more testosterone, so it's a different thing. But we see more and more cases at this point of PCOS. Anybody know what that is? Polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis. I worked for a chiropractor for 2 years, and this is an increase in androgens or male hormones and adrenaline, and we're seeing, the medical community is seeing more and more cases of women with these syndromes, these diseases, and we don't know why. But it's this unnatural push for the woman to be a man too. And I'm not talking about energetically holding yourself. witnessing your own emotions, having the overview of what the community needs. These are the masculine essences that can be infused into a woman that create a healthy dynamic. Being able to hold yourself. It's like the matriarch, if you would think of like a crone or a woman who has gained wisdom, an elder woman who is able to take care of the community. And with a man, same thing. You don't have to be, completely opposite spectrum where you're crying your eyes out and watching The Notebook and eating chocolates and, it's not the other way. It's just being able to
love The Notebook.
recognize. It's just being able to.
Oh my God, Ryan Gosling.
It's just being able to recognize your own emotions, being able to express yourself when needed, being able to create clear connection. Yeah, because those are the wounded parts or the unseen parts. But anyway, anytime you're inflating yourself, it's delusion.